Welcome to Curious Coaching, the Sport Northern Ireland podcast for coaches who are driven to explore new ways, thirsty for new ideas, and passionately curious about how they can maximise the power of sport through great coaching. The podcast that seeks not to answer coaching questions, but to provoke them.
Hello and welcome to the Curious Coaching Podcast with your host Michael Cook and myself, Simon Toole. Today we're really happy to welcome Suzanne Robinson to the podcast. Suzanne, it's great to have you here. Tell us a little bit about the coaching that you do, where you coach and what you coach.
Okay, thank you for having me. Currently, at the minute, I work volunteer with Special Olympics Club in my local area. Our club is called Ripple Special Olympics Club. So at the minute, we allow 10-pin bowling, swimming and football coaching. We meet 3 nights a week plus a Saturday morning. We've probably over 70 athletes currently at the minute, so we're a very big club within the area, and we've got quite a good group of core coaches who help us out on a weekly basis.
Brilliant. And would you be there all of those times of the 3 weeks, or how do you manage your week?
Most nights, yes, I am there. I have my level 2 swimming coach, so as part of your insurance, you have to have a level 2 coach on poolside. So I'm there both Wednesday night and Friday nights for pool time. And then on a Thursday night, I only do every other week, which is lovely at football. And then a Saturday morning at 10-pin bowling, we'll have quite a few volunteers at it who pretty much run the club. So we would nip in every now and again just to check if everything's okay with them. But yeah, so it's busy, but good. Certainly busy. And you're doing that all on a voluntary basis?
Yes,
all of our coaches and athletes, or all of our coaches and are volunteers, yes. Yeah.
Brilliant. It's a big commitment. And you said when we were chatting just before we came on to record about you were also doing some volunteering then with Special Olympics Ulster on top of that as well.
Yes, so part of the routine of the year is in-house competitions within our own clubs, with other clubs, but then also Special Olympics Ulster provide competitions throughout the year. So what they do is they'll then send out information about what competitions are coming up, and they have then volunteers who actually come on board and help out on the days. So part of that is staging an awards team, so I'm very lucky, I suppose, in that I've been asked to help out with that, and I've been trained up in that, so I can go along and manage that side of things, which is probably one of the most important parts of Special Olympics competitions, to make it run smoothly and make it run on time. So I would help out as much as possible. Just whenever I'm free, I usually do end up going to all the sports, which is great because it means you get, number one, to see and meet loads of athletes who are absolutely amazing people, and you also get to experience different sports, which we don't provide for our athletes.
Brilliant. Absolutely massive amount of hours in the year, I guess, being put in, even week to week, never mind month to month or year to year. And you're fitting that all alongside for a bit of employment and other things going on for you as well.
Unfortunately, yes, I have to work. I haven't won the lottery yet, but yes, work full time, Monday to Friday. So then obviously my volunteering is excess of that, but I wouldn't be there if I didn't enjoy it, and I do at the minute, so it's great. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I'm sure we'll chat and hand over to Michael here now, but I'm sure we'll chat more as we go along. But it's absolutely massive voluntary commitment, that. So I'm sure all the athletes appreciate it.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. An amazing commitment. And
thank you.
I suppose that brings us on to our theme of the podcast for this series around coach wellbeing. And it strikes me that, much like yourself, there's so many coaches up and down the country that give a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of effort, not only when they're coaching, but also away from the pool or the hall or the field or wherever they practice. One of the concepts that we'd love to speak to you about is what does coach wellbeing mean to you, or what comes to mind when we hear that concept, coach wellbeing?
Really, it means to me how, I suppose, coaches feel on a daily basis, going to their club, managing their athletes, managing the parents, managing the paperwork, anything like that there. It's managing their own stress levels, and most importantly, their mental health. A lot of coaches get an awful lot out of coaching and an awful lot of enjoyment, but obviously there is times when that stress can become too much. You know, a lot of people work on adrenaline from that stress, but it can become too much. It can become laboursome. It can then prevent them enjoying themselves. And then once you start to feel that portrays onto your athletes. We're very different from mainstream because our athletes all have learning disabilities. So we're very lucky in that when we do go, and if we are having the most awful day at work and we do go and meet up with our athletes to coach them, they make everything just so much better because their outlook in life is so much better. They always make us smile. I remember one time we would have a group of young athletes who do Duke of Edinburgh, and one of the girls had messaged us on the day, I think it was a Friday, and she was like, having an awful day, cried all day, things are awful in school, I mightn't be able to come. And I just said, come on ahead, come to us, we'll have a chat, see what happens, see if we can't help you. So she arrived, and by the end of our training session, she was doing one-to-ones with our swimmers. By the end of that, she was smiling, and she came over and she says, I'm so glad I come, because our athletes do bring the best out of people. They deal with stress, deal with hassles, deal with really big issues every day, but yet they come every week and train with us and enjoy it. And that is probably why I'm still there after 17 years. So it is.
Yeah, 17 years, a very long time to be involved. And you can tell as you're telling that story, you're coming to life, telling it to us, and obviously amazing experiences and amazing memories during your time there. Be really interested to know, because we want to keep that feeling. As you quite rightly said, there coaches really get a lot out of coaching, and they really enjoy it, and they create brilliant experiences for themselves and their athletes. On that, why do you think then it's so important that we ensure coaches' well-being is maintained throughout the season, throughout the year, throughout that decade, you know, however long they're involved?
Preventing burnout. That is, you know, at the end of the day, if we don't have coaches and volunteers, we don't have clubs. We can't meet if we don't have our volunteers. And we keep telling that to our families, that if we don't have enough volunteers, we can't meet. We can't run our club. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to prevent that burnout. You're trying to prevent your coaches from turning around and saying, no, can't do this anymore, I need to take a break. You're also ensuring that you have a club for the future, and you're also ensuring, because as I said before, we're very, very lucky to have quite a core group of young volunteers who come on board through Duke of Edinburgh, and it's keeping them involved and showing them that actually volunteering is great. And it's really good. It's not just something for your CV, but it is something for the future. And what we find then is they'll go off to university, and in the hope then in the future when they're back or in somewhere else that they will continue to volunteer. And it's all about making sure that their experiences and any coach's experience or volunteer's experience is making sure that they're wanting to be there and they're wanting to come and they're enthusiastic. Because if they're enthusiastic, then obviously they'll be able to motivate their athletes a lot more.
Yeah, really good point, and really interesting about that. I feel like a culture of enjoyment or a culture of retention, where actually within our club, we know people will leave at a certain point, but we want to keep them there as long as possible and make sure that they have a best possible experience. And if we can mitigate against burnout, then it's a very good chance of being able to do that, or a better chance of being able to do that.
Yeah, and I think also if you have coaches who have been there for years, like myself, you have a lot of experience, and you can't get that experience from new people, so you're wanting to keep them on board, maybe not as much on board, but still within the club, so that they can kind of teach others their ways of doing things and why, you should be doing things and that sort of thing, so it is definitely about keeping your volunteers happy so that they will stay with you as long as possible, and that's as simple as possible.
No, definitely. And I mean, one of the things you talked a minute ago about, Suzanne, was about preventing burnout, and then just now talking about trying to keep people happy and what they're doing. What do you think are some of the challenges, or I suppose what makes it difficult in preventing that burnout within your environment, for example?
Within our environment, we find lack of volunteers. That is our main thing with our club. Our main issues with our club every year is getting enough volunteers to run the club. As I said before, we're a club who has our athletes have learning disabilities, so a lot of it is you can't have a lane of say 6 swimmers and one person on that lane. You have to have maybe 2 or 3 managing the lane, managing. We would also do a learn to swim, and that's all 1-to-1, and it's half-hour sessions. So it's making sure if you have enough volunteers involved, then it means we can run the club properly, and it's more enjoyable, and there's not as much stress. You're not having to run different lanes and things like that there.
So a big part of it then, from what you're saying, is around trying to create the circumstances where no one person's been asked to do more than they're actually able to give to the club, which I guess is, in your case, is quite a lot. I'm sure it's the same for some other guys as well.
Yes, no, definitely. And as I say, we need a lot of volunteers. The more we have, the easier it is for everybody, and the easier it is for the current coaches to manage the volunteers and manage the athletes. And it means then also we can get so much more out of our athletes if we have a lot more 1-to-1s, and we can progress them, because it is a very slow progression, them learning to swim, so we can progress them that wee bit quicker if we have enough 1-to-1s. And it is this. So if we have plenty of volunteers and plenty of support, then the burnout won't happen as quick, because the coaches and the volunteers have an array of jobs that they can do. And it's all about variety as well,
And you talked even about that conversation with one of your colleagues in the club, and them coming along that night too. So not necessarily that example specifically, but in general, how do you, as somebody who's been involved in the club and operating the club for a long period of time, how do you, I suppose, understand what's going on for other people, of where they might be at? Are they feeling close to that pinch point where it's all becoming a bit too much for them, and actually what can we do to try and ease back on them? Or how do you understand that about the people around you?
I suppose it's talking to them, chatting to them. Club nights can be very difficult to get time to chat to people, so we have like a core group of coaches who have been there a long time and would, I suppose, run the club as such. So what we do, we try and chat to everybody and get a chance to chat to everybody, maybe not every week at every session, but we do try. We have an open honesty. If you have any issues, you come to us. We have WhatsApp groups. If you want, you come to us, you just tell us your issues. But a big thing is, if you see a volunteer coach who enjoys it and then all of a sudden is missing, isn't coming as often, or when they do come, they're just not as happy. It's seeing the signs and noticing the signs that there maybe is issues. And obviously the issues mightn't be to do with club, it could be home life. But it's just reaching out to them and making sure that if we can help, or if there is any help out there, that we signpost them to the right areas and right places, and just give them the support that they need.
Brilliant. I think I know Mick in the previous episode, who you won't have heard yet, but I know Michael, you and I would have heard Mick talk as well about somebody who just sees that person and sees the change, because it might be quite subtle, but being close enough to understand the person and understand when something has changed in their demeanour or in their mood or whatever, and that could be enough. And it's really great to hear that, I suppose, endorsed and repeated again. In terms of your own balance then, how do you try and map that to, I guess we've talked a little bit as a club about all the people around you within the club, but for yourself, how do you try and balance that out so that you're not getting to the point where it's come a bit much? Because we know, I suppose, the longer you're in a club, sometimes the more responsibilities you accrue over the years, and they sort of all build up, and it can become, essentially, it's another full-time job in some ways. But so it is having to be balanced. So how do you manage that for yourself then?
I suppose I enjoy it so much that it is a huge part of my life, and has been. I have to say, I have always enjoyed it. I have always loved it. I've never said no when asked. If I can help, I will help. And we are trying to progress the club, and our club, due to our chairperson that we have, has really grown so much, and it's an amazing club now that we have, and we're very proud of it. But I have my home life. I enjoy my home life. My nights off, I do enjoy them. I didn't realise how much I done with Special Olympics because it was just second nature because I've always done it. I didn't realise just how much I'd done until COVID hit. 1 week we were organising our competitions. We had Special Olympics Ulster competitions coming up. I was venue manager for the Lisburn Leisureplex for the Winter Games for floorball that was coming up. So we had all that prepped, and then within 1 week it was all off. And I had absolutely nothing, just go home and do my normal thing. And it wasn't until COVID hit and we didn't have club that I was like, oh, this is quite nice being at home every night and not having to run out or not having to go here and go there. But what we did that summer is we started doing Zoom bowling with some of our athletes. And again, that really was just a matter of seeing the athletes and seeing, oh no, actually we do miss them and we do want to get back. Now getting back, I have to say, after COVID was really difficult. And I have lost some of my passion for it, but it's still there. And as soon as you see the athletes, it's brilliant. They're great and I enjoy my time with them. So I suppose it's just making sure that we would take a summer break, and I know quite a lot of our parents and carers would love us not to take a summer break, but we do, and we take a break over Christmas, and it's very vital. And I know some of the volunteers were like, oh, we could go on, and we're like, no, you have to take a break. And it is just a matter of noticing when you need to take a break, and if you need to take a night off, and taking a step back when you do need to. I'm also part of the committee, so that's a lot of work as well. But it has to be done. Somebody has it to do, which is a lot. In every club, everybody is struggles. Trying to find people to do things, but it is just a matter of making sure that you're doing other things outside of Special Olympics and outside of work and enjoying them. But I have to say, Special Olympics is a huge part of my life, and only for the athletes it wouldn't be. And I say anybody who I chat to about volunteering with our club, I always tell them, come and meet our athletes. You'll understand why I do it. Because they are absolutely brilliant, and like their parents and carers have them 24/7, and the work that they do with them is unbelievable. And if we have the privilege of having them for maybe just an hour a week, and that gives them a bit of a break, and that's what Special Olympics is all about. It's just brilliant, and seeing their friendships develop and seeing them develop through sport and develop their skills. I remember one night we started football a few years ago, so it's relatively new to us, and our head coach, he was like, right, we'll get them to run backwards. And we were like, no, they'll not be able to do that, and they all done it. And it's just the wee things and you can see then the younger athletes who are learning to swim move into the main pool, and when you see that makes it all worthwhile. So it does.
Oh, absolutely, and I think you've articulated a number of things there that are really important for us to consider around coach wellbeing. One of them being actually, well, if you can see that you're making a difference, well, you feel like you're contributing really, really positively.
Yes.
That probably will keep you feeling a bit better about your
That's
your
definitely the best, and it's a really, really slow process with some of our athletes. But when you see that just little thing that changes, and we have some parents who say our athletes will never be at competitions, but they don't realise that you can walk in Special Olympics for swimming, so we have them in competitions. And when you see that, and you see the parents and the carers and the grannies and granddads crying up in the venue and watching them, that's when it makes it all worthwhile. So it does.
Oh, totally. No, it's sounds amazing. And another thing you talked about there was that COVID break, and I guess maybe for the likes of Special Olympics and some other disability sport organisations where the return was actually more difficult because maybe they were in the athletes maybe were at higher risk.
Yes.
If they became ill or whatever as well. So things can come back a little bit slowly. But I think sport organisations across the board, so many of them have seen it's been hard to re-attract their volunteers back after COVID as well, when people have enjoyed that little bit of, well, I don't mind this wee bit of extra free time.
I never realised how good it was to be at home every night. I really didn't, you know. And I'm the first to admit I have struggled back after COVID, but as I say, I've got back into the swing of it, and it is more difficult, and but I still enjoy it, and otherwise I definitely wouldn't be there. But I think, you know, parents and carers and of the clubs that they're involved in really do need to look at who is volunteering and who is coaching on a weekly basis, and see if they can support in any way, because a lot of them are, and I can understand why, they'll just drop them off and go and maybe just criticise and never actually support. So really they need to be stepping up to the mark and supporting the people who are spending their personal time out of their week to help their kids, you know.
Definitely. So there's loads of stuff there around actually how do we recruit to make sure that people aren't overloaded. The other thing you talked about there was your breaks in the summer as well, around how crucial they are, even if somebody doesn't think they are in week 1 or week 2 of that break, actually over the course of the year, you know, and a lot of the time we talked about rest for players or athletes or participants in sport, and that break and helping them get to the point where they miss it. But it's so crucial, as you've said, for volunteers as well to get that rest and recovery away from it.
Yep. One of the things that I'd love to ask you here, because part of our discussion so far has been around, well, if burnout is a natural thing, and based on the nature of sport and the nature of coaching, that there's a good chance people will get burned out at a certain point. What solutions do we have that can help us move past that, pull people away from burnout, or help them through that period in their lives? From an organisational point of view, so when I say organisational, like the club or the governing body, what do you think they can do to really help coaches either stay away from burnout, help them through burnout, or just support their overall well-being?
I think probably link up with them more and signpost them to things, but do it on club nights, you know, so link up more on club nights. And I know everybody's busy, but try and get involved more with the club nights and show then you're not taking them out, not taking volunteers out or coaches out for another night. You're showing them on the nights that they're there, or signposting to the clubs that they can relay of like organisations that can help for your mental health and things like that there. It's also making sure that if you can help in any way of recruitment for volunteers and coaches, training up of coaches, you know, so we would have a certain amount of coaches, but we would have a lot of volunteers. So it's getting the volunteers actually trained up in the coaching courses so that the coaches can then be spread out and maybe rotated around for that. So, because as I say, we have 2 level 2 coaches and that's it for our swimming. So that's quite a small number, but we have quite a few level 1s, you know. So it's all about ensuring that the clubs and the governing bodies signpost, because a lot of people will just get stuck in that rut. They'll not know that there is help out there or where they could find the help. So it's liaising closely with the volunteers and coaches to show them that there is actually areas out there that can help and that they're not on their own, that people do burn out quite easily, and how they can kind of go about maybe changing that and preventing it from happening.
Yeah, and that was a really good point actually in terms of doing it on a club night. So if you're going to talk to coaches about burnout or their well-being, and we're pulling them out of the house another night, it's quite ironic, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, so trying to maximise the time that they do have. In terms, so flipping that on its head then, in terms of what can coaches do to ensure they maintain that balance, or they're looking after their own well-being?
Learn to say no, which I haven't done yet, but will someday. No, it's probably just realising that what the signs are that you are starting to struggle, and if you are starting to struggle, to chat to other coaches and try and get that there is solutions within the club about how to do it, and pull in maybe parents, again, getting them involved more, trying to get that maybe some coaches can have one night a week off, or maybe doing every other week, involved with the club. But it's really just making sure that as a coach, you're taking a step back and you're realising, well, actually, I'm not enjoying this as much, so there is something wrong. And communication's a huge thing within clubs. And if you communicate to other coaches, then obviously solutions can maybe be found, and things within the club can be changed to make it better for future coaches as well as yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. If we don't have that conversation, or we're not afforded a place to have that conversation, then it's going to be very difficult to know if someone's feeling burnt out, or if someone's struggling. So having that conversation more often, or providing opportunities, I think does offer that communication piece. One of the things we've talked about on this series is that quite often coaching becomes part of our identity. So people see us in our local community and they go, "Oh, there's Suzanne the coach, and we know she coaches all." And personally, we think about ourselves in a coaching space. A lot of coaches then sometimes can get trapped by that. So identity-wise, if I'm not coaching, then who am I? Because I'm Suzanne the coach. Have you seen coaches go through that? And if so, or have you been through that yourself? You know, where your identity's attached. How do people then step away, or have that conversation that they're burned out when it's so ingrained in their identity?
I suppose it's a hard one. That I suppose it's all about. It is just really having that conversation and realising that there is something wrong, there is issues involved, and you know that you do have other things with it going on in your life. You know, we always tell our coaches that, you know, family life comes first. As much as we need you here, your family life is more important, your work life is more important, because we don't pay your bills. It's the same with our young volunteers. If they have a job, you know, that pays your bills. If they have schoolwork, you know, we do struggle if you don't come, but that is the most important thing. So it's making sure that, I suppose that you learn to manage that yourself and understand what you're doing and why you're there, but also that you can take a step back. Clubs will run. It's awful to say that, but clubs will run maybe differently. But you do need to be able to take a step back and realise that you do need a break. But you'll always be able to come back if you know if you feel you need to.
Yeah, and it's that prioritising, I guess, in the wider scope. Sort of last wee bit before I just hand over to Simon again here, but if we were to create a vision of a really healthy club where coaches didn't get burned out and well-being was taken as a priority, what would that look like? What do you think that space would look or feel, or how would people experience that space?
Probably loads of volunteers, probably too many, which would be amazing, but probably just having an open communication, so that if anybody does have any issues, they're very easily able to chat to different people, different coaches, having everybody round a table every now and again to chat openly about how things are, and if anybody is having any issues and how we can address them. It's about making sure that there's signposts there and easily seen of where they can get help if they need help, and that the club is actually in support of them, and that the coaches and the athletes and the families are fully supportive of them as an individual and as a coach. And if they need anything, that we would, as a club, we would try our best to help out in any way.
Absolutely, that would be lovely, wouldn't it? I think every club would love something like that. But I think, you know, ideally, if we had enough volunteers right throughout, and enough, you mentioned earlier in our discussion about qualified volunteers, so the pressure wasn't on any individual person or a group of people. That's a lovely space to be in, because we can share the load. Obviously, you know, every club has various challenges that sit outside that, but to have enough people there, and good people and supportive people as part of your club, is definitely a key solution for me as well.
Definitely. And on that theme, if somebody was listening to this and thought, actually, do you know what? That sounds like an amazing place. The difference that the people are making within Ripple's Special Olympics Club. How would they get in touch with you guys if they just happen to hear and go, actually, that is somewhere I would like to volunteer? Yeah.
Well, the first thing would be to contact Special Olympics Ulster, because Ripples is just one club. There's quite a lot of clubs in the area in Northern Ireland and in Ulster. So my advice would be go on to Special Olympics Ireland website, look up Special Olympics Ulster. They will have the website there. They'll have the email address or the phone number. Contact the Ulster office. It'll have a list of clubs, and you can sign up with Special Olympics Ulster. So throughout the year, you can help them out with their competition. So if you can't commit to an hour a week or half an hour a week or 2 hours a week, you can just do their competitions, which is maybe 2 or 3 competitions a year if you want to. You can pick and choose when or which sports, or else then you can contact them and ask for local clubs within your area, and they will give you the contact details for the clubs. And yes, it'll be the best thing you'll ever do. The athletes are just amazing. I'm involved weekly with Ripples, and I also do the Special Olympics Ulster, as I said before, competitions. I'm very lucky that I've been with Team Ulster down to the Ireland Games on a few occasions, and it is the most exhausting time away, but it's the most rewarding because our athletes are just the best. They really are.
Definitely, and it's very, I suppose what's great about that is actually there's loads of different options there in terms of getting involved somewhere provincial level, at a local level, something that's every now and again through the year, or something that's a regular week to week. So you've got opportunities to get involved as a volunteer in a way that suits you and suits around your life, which is, I suppose, back to a lot of things you've talked about, is around how can you fit it around.
When people hear volunteer and think, oh, that's an hour every week, I wouldn't have time, I have too much on. And again, volunteering isn't for everybody. We would tell our volunteers, if they're interested, come along, see what we do. If you want to, then you can sign up and volunteer with us. If you don't, that's fine, because it isn't for everybody, and sport isn't for everybody. But you don't have to be sporty. You don't have to be. We have coaches who are swimming. Some of our swimming coaches can't swim, and our athletes think this is hilarious. But we just say, if you're drowning, they're not jumping in for you. So it's all about just meeting the athletes. And again, it's, if you can't do every week, you could do once a month, or you can just sign up with the competitions and help out just whenever you can.
Brilliant. No, hopefully somebody will pick up and have a look after this as well, which would be really great. And now we've asked you a lot of questions. This is always nearly the hardest question we ask.
Yes.
Is there anything that we haven't asked you think that would be worth sharing with others who might be operating within a club and might be useful for them and the work that they're doing?
I suppose just if you are struggling, or it's just ask for help. There's plenty of help out there. And it's the same with mental health. There's the whole thing about mental health. People don't ask. People just assume there is no help out there, and there is no guidance, and there isn't anybody that will help out. And my advice would be just, if you have a question that you want to ask, just ask it. There'll always be somebody, or there'll always be somebody to guide you to the right answer, or to help out wherever you can.
Brilliant. That's really good advice, and I think probably a really good place to leave the podcast. So, Suzanne, thanks again for all of your insights around that. I think there's some brilliant things for individual people, but also for clubs and governing bodies and sports organisations to think about. So, again, from the two of us, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you
for coming in for today.
Thank you.
Curious Coaching is brought to you by Sport Northern Ireland. We hope that this episode has sparked some curiosity for you and your coaching. The future belongs to the curious.